What else can we do in this? Top fans. What's top fans? Interesting. Interesting. That's awesome. That's cool. What else? Well, retouch. I don't know who you are, but if you have any English experience, I could use some help with a narrative essay. That'd be awesome. Mosir Hamid, Exit West. What's up, Steele? A comparative essay of Exit West, which chronicles a fictitious story, a sci-fi story of love, where two immigrants have like these mysterious doors start popping up everywhere, and immigrants or anyone is able to walk in through these doors and show up somewhere else in the world. The doors show up at random, and if you step through, you end up somewhere else. So if you're a victim of, like, you're in a country that's ravaged by war, you can step through one of these mysterious doors that pops up anywhere. It could be anywhere, and then you end up somewhere else. But it could be somewhere else that's good, or somewhere else that's worse. So I have to do a comparative essay of that and how that relates to real stories in real life. It's tough because, I don't know, it's illegal immigration. And it seems like school wants you to accept it as, or school wants you to see it like we should be more sympathetic to it, but you toss the coin up in the air, man. I don't know. If you choose to go to another country and you get caught, I'm saying from experience, you that's the consequence to it. And if you get caught, you gotta pay for it. But it's hard to find to make the comparisons between with sympathy sometimes. Any ideas are greatly appreciated. I had to get out of the house because I can't think in the house. Anyone watching, you guys have any immigration stories of escaping a bad life or something? I could use that in my essay. What should we call this question? Comparative essay. Send your Send your stories immigration. Facelift. I don't care. I'm good, Axel. I'm good. How about you? I don't know how to build cabins, bro. It's funny. I gotta do a comparative essay. If anyone has any success stories of immigration or stories where you were fleeing conflict in your country, that'd be great. This is a Beamer X5, 2005. It's cool, it's nice, man. I think it's a little heavier to drive than Japanese cars, but it's nice. Dodgers, yeah. Let's see what happens. Is that tonight? Might go to a bar and watch that. Again, any ideas for this shit would be great. I guess I could read what I have so far, which is not great. It's not terrible. Oh, it's on now. Fuck. Damn, I have to stop writing. I have to grind. I don't know if I should grind or go watch the W game. Let's see if this shit downloads. Alright, here we go. I'm gonna read it. I'm probably gonna take off to the bar and watch the damn game because now you got me thinking. A ball bounces and rolls. I'm gonna start over. A ball bounces and rolls across the courtyard of a South Central LA home as two children play soccer, unaware of the looming storm ahead. Minutes earlier, a familiar older gentleman had stepped through a tall 15-foot by 30-foot gate with a small 3-foot by 7 door at its center. The same door through which he was now exiting. In a flash, after locking eyes with the old soul, who seemed to hold the door open for an eternity within our gaze, more than a handful of agents stormed in, military-grade rifles in hand, all pointed at me in the initial rush. Once they moved farther into the property, one remained, his rifle fixated at the base of my skull, where the occipital meets C1. Their true target, a drug-dealing undocumented grandpa, who had just completed a sale to a regular. After reading Mohsin Hamid's Exit West, I came to see this event as my first encounter with a mysterious door. The door through which a new world came to me was an old one, a door I knew well and expected little more of. It was a door that brought me happiness when I was tired and needed my bed, but also frustration when I didn't want to return home from the park. Yet somehow, in a very non-fictional world, I came face to face with the incarnation of Hamid's door concept. This experience opened my eyes to the harsh realities behind the idea of immigration that Hamid explores through magical realism. The fear, the uncertainty, and the hope that accompany every passage into the unknown. While Hamid's Exit West uses fantastical doors to symbolize the emotional and psychological dimensions of migration, many real-world immigrant testimonies reveal similar experiences of displacement, loss, and resilience through the literal borders and testimonies. What the fuck? And resilience through literal borders and journeys. This essay will compare Hamid's fictional portrayal of migration with first-hand immigrant narratives to examine how both capture the human cost of leaving one world in search of another. It sounds like ChatGPT at the end. Let me know. Let me read up. The best example I have for you is the game Red Dead Redemption 2. The main character wants to escape a bad life in America, so he attempts to flee to Tahiti. Oh, thank you. I know Jesus loves all of us, man. But that's another concept. It's a hard one, Jesus. You ever think that how easy it would be to infiltrate something good? Something that's posed as good and then get your way? It's scary. When do you know when you're the wolf? Or how do you know if you're not being a sheep? Anyways. So after this introduction, did anyone catch a thesis statement in there? Anyone? Tell me. Oh, you guys are all gone. Lord. It's funny still. You done with work, or you just got extra time, or you do this all day? I'm only asking so I know, not to offend. Now I need to look for examples of this crap. Dang, dude. This is not for kids. I specifically put not for kids. Don't get me in trouble. I won't get myself in trouble, I guess. I'm quiet because I'm thinking about what I have to fucking... I have to think about what I have to write after this. What is my thesis statement? What's my thesis statement? This experience opened my eyes to the harsh realities behind the idea. This experience opened my eyes to the harsh realities behind the idea of migration that Hamid explores through magical realism. The fear, uncertainty, and hope that accompany every passage into the unknown. Well, Hamid, oh man, does it really though? Because, damn, I don't know, does it really? I'm portraying. I start with a scenario where a kid, police storm through a door, and a kid is pretty much arrested, I guess you could say. And after they have guns to his head, I reference Mohsin Hamid's Exit West, a science fiction story where mysterious doors pop up and people can walk in through. So I reference it to that mysterious door, which that door used to be that regular same door all the time, and all of a sudden it became this door where a new world came in, a world of police. I wonder if that's my thesis thing. This experience opened my eyes to the harsh realities behind the idea of migration that Hamid explores through magical realism. The fear, uncertainty, and hope that accompany every hope. The fear, uncertainty, or hope, I think is better, because it's not always and hope. Sometimes it's fear and uncertainty and not hope that accompany every passage into the unknown, although they were coming into the passage. But this is saying that accompany every passage into what they're coming into, so they're coming into my life through that portal. While Hamid's Exit West uses fantastical doors to symbolize the emotional and psychological dimensions of migration, many real-world immigrant testimonies reveal similar experiences of displacement, loss, and resilience through the literal borders. Let's try it again. Sorry for the kids. While Hamid's Exit West uses fantastical doors to symbolize the emotional and psychological dimensions of migration, many real world immigrant testimonies reveal similar experiences of displacement, loss, and resilience through literal borders and journeys. It's not bad. This essay will compare Hamid's fictional portrayal of migration. This essay will compare Hamid's fictional portrayal. This essay will compare Hamid's fictional portrayal of migration with first-hand immigrant narratives to examine how both capture the human cost of leaving one world in search of another. Okay. Next one. One struggle that was covered. I don't know how I'm going to fix this later, but I'll fix it afterwards. One struggle that was covered in Exit West was the loss of life that Said, which looks like Saeed, but I was told it's Said, was the loss of life that Said experienced when his mother was shot with a shell, comma, while retrieving jewelry, while retrieving an item from the family car. The family car. There is a great the mind psychological impact there is great psychological impact. What's up, brother? Peace. I don't know what that means. One struggle that was covered in Exit West was the loss of life that Said experienced when his mother was shot with a shell while retrieving an item from the family car. His childhood territory was turned from a Candyland. Let's call it Candyland. This is the exposure of live. Believe in horror. Why would I do a Q&A with horoscopes? Okay. I'm doing a comparative essay. If you guys are English majors, fucking help me out, dude, because slacking. This is due tomorrow, and I want to go watch the damn game, so I don't know if this is going to get done. I need a transition sentence between this essay will compare Hamid's fictional portrayal of migration with first-hand immigrant narratives to examine how both capture the human cost of leaving one world in search of another. But maybe that is the transition, because let me know if you guys know where the thesis statement is on this. Let's see. I think it's here. Okay. Let's see. January, February, March, April, May, June, July, September, December. These are the months of the year. These are the months of the year. You're crazy, bro. Anyways. This experience opened my eyes to the harsh realities behind the idea of migration that Hamid explores through magical realism, the fear, uncertainty, or hope that accompany every passage into the unknown. While Hamid's exit west uses fantastical doors to symbolize the emotional and psychological dimensions of migration, many real-world migrant testimonies reveal similar experiences of displacement, loss, and resilience through the literal borders and journeys. Now that is a transition right there. I'd rather leave it. This essay will compare Hamid's fictional portrayal of migration and first-hand immigrant narratives to examine how both capture the human cost of leaving one world in search of another. One struggle that was covered. No, I don't want that. One struggle that was covered. A common struggle among immigrant populations from war-torn countries. A common struggle among immigrant populations specifically hailing from war-torn countries. Fluff it up. Is the loss of life and its impact on the ability. Wait, see, I think I'm getting too crazy with it. A common struggle among immigrant populations, specifically hailing from war-torn countries, is the loss of life common struggle among immigrant populations, specifically hailing from war-torn countries, is the trauma of losing a loved one. Losing a loved one. Refer back to the military action. Common struggle among immigrant populations, specifically hailing from war-torn countries. A common struggle among... That doesn't make sense because then I'm specifically saying... And I'm saying it's a common struggle. So... one struggle experienced by those immigrants that one struggle experienced by populations who migrate from war-torn, right? From war-torn countries. One struggle experienced by populations who migrate from war-torn countries is the psychological trauma of losing a loved one in a graphic fashion from the ensuing violence. An example in the book is when Said's mother is struck An example in the book is when Said's mother is struck by a shell while An example in the book is when Said's mother is struck by a shell while the Sid trying to retrieve an item from the family car in the middle of a firefight, which is fucking ridiculous. You take your ass inside if there's a firefight, or at least behind some barricade. I would run a little bit from the situation. I'm not saying I can around bullets, but get away from the conflict at least. Not go look for an earring in the car when there's bombs raining. Again, if you guys have any immigrant examples of war-torn countries and people fleeing, immigrating to a different place, please share it with me. It would help me a lot in my comparative essay of Exit West to real-life narratives of migration. As it says here, this essay will compare Hamid's fictional portrayal of migration with first-hand immigrant narratives to examine how both capture the human cost of leaving one world in search of another. One struggle experienced by populations who migrate from war-torn countries is the psychological spell check trauma of losing a loved one in graphic fashion from the ensuing violence. An example in the book is when Said's mother is struck by a shell trying to retrieve an item from the family car in the middle of a firefight. I'm gonna look up some real world examples of some of these things. But first, let's see here. I have to go to this place. And then I have to go to assignments. Comparative essay. I'm gonna figure out how to link my screen onto this so I can show you guys my screen at some point. But first, let's go to Brandon Stanton's Humans of New York. Brandon Stanton's Humans of New York. Let's read about this. Humans of New York is a groundbreaking photography project by Brandon Stanton that captures the stories and portraits of everyday people in New York City, showcasing their unique experience and perspectives. I don't know why I'm reading this, but let's see. Let's see what it says. Below is a first-person history of Humans of New York. Okay, so what do I click? I began Humans of New York in the summer of 2010 as a photography I still can't say it right. Photography project My initial aim was to take 10,000 photos of random New Yorkers and plot these photos on a map of the city. I wanted to see if I could make a living as an artist. That was the whole plan. Instagram did not yet exist at the time. I'm sorry. Instagram did not yet exist at the time. Facebook was only a platform to share photos with your closest friends. I put my hopes in creating a popular enough blog that I'd be able to sell prints of my work. But I don't understand how this links to what I have to do. Select one of the narratives from Brandon Stanton's Humans of New York. Let's look at the other one. The Washington Post's Refuge. Let's go to that one. See what that's about. See what that's about. Washington Post Refuge. And then the next one is UN refugee agencies with love from Central America. Copy. And paste. The last one that I need is Social Science Works interviews with refugees. Interviews with refugees. Put that in there. Alright. I'm gonna read from the Washington Post. And I'm not aligned to any of these things, but it's just something I have to read. See, there's changing region, changing lives, stitching a life, scraps of life, born into exile, a child goes to work, downwardly mobile, sniper victim, wedding day, after a century, sadness in the slums, war widow, medical misery, new orphans, buried in foreign soil, lifestyle lost, new camp rises, turned back, a familiar fate. About this project, in October, Washington Post photographer Linda Davidson and I set off for Turkey, Jordan, and Lebanon to report on the Syrian refugee crisis, one of the largest forced migrations of people since World War II. Our goal was to document the size and complexity of the crisis, showing its effects on the lives of individual refugees as well as the lasting impacts on the countries hosting them. We broke the crisis down into 18 personal stories of a wide range of refugees. Linda and I interviewed and photographed the widows and orphans, the wealthy, the wounded, children and the elderly, those surviving in camps and those suffering in urban slums. To capture the full range of refugee life, we witnessed a birth and a wedding, classrooms and operating rooms, and we visited a cemetery where families mourn not just for their dead, but for the fact that they are buried in foreign soil. We saw terrible misery and inspiring stories of resilience and survival. We hope the portraits of these refugees and the nations struggling to help them will further an understanding of one of the most daunting human crises. Human crisis? That was weird. In recent memory. These people and these countries will never be the same. Kevin Sullivan. Alright, let's read the first story. It's a little girl. Ooh, she looks like she got blown up or shot. Dania Amrush wears a Hello Kitty shirt, tiny heart-shaped earrings, and her hair in cute little pigtails. She looks like any other 7-year-old, except for the jagged scars on the bridge of her nose across her chin. There is much worse beneath her blanket on the 3rd floor of the Kilis State Hospital in southern Turkey. Kilis? A huge seeping wound on her stomach is closed with an angry grid of stitches. The casts are finally off her broken right leg and right hand, but her fingers are still black and blue, and she can barely walk. Her lower body is covered with shrapnel scars. 5 months ago, Dania and her family were sitting in their home in Aleppo, Syria, about 60 miles south of here, which is Turkey. Right? That's the context? Oh, yeah. 60 miles from Turkey. When a bomb dropped from the sky, her grandmother, aunt, uncle, and 2 cousins were killed instantly. Another cousin lost his legs. Daniel was mangled. Mohammed Amrouche, her father, says that after what Syrian President Bashar al-Assad's military did to them, he can't go back. When Dania is ready to leave the hospital, the family will stay in Turkey, joining nearly 700,000 other Syrians who have taken shelter in the country. This is our home now, he says. One of the world's largest forced migrations since World War II is transforming the Middle East. The United Nations and governments in the countries where the refugees have taken shelter estimate that between 2.3 million and 2.8 million Syrians have fled their homeland. The United Nations says that The United Nations says that number is rising by nearly 3,000 people a day, with no end in sight, for a conflict that has lasted nearly 3 years. This paper's from when? I'll give you guys a date when this paper's from, if I can find it. 2013. This is from 2013. So I'm reading some old stuff, but I need it for school. The cost of the Syrian civil war continues to rise between the estimated 125,000 people killed and the tens of thousands maimed. The massive influx of refugees into neighboring countries, especially Lebanon, Jordan, and Turkey, is crippling fragile economies and damaging delicate political and religious balances in the region. These places will never be the same, said Helen Clark, former Prime Minister of New Zealand, who now spends much of her time in the region as head of the UN Development Program. Wait, let me read that again, because that was fucked. These places will never be the same, said Helen Clark, former Prime Minister of New Zealand, who now spends much of her time in the region as head... See? It sucks. Who now spends much of her time in the region as head of the UN Development Program. Many of these people will never go home. 2 a.m. I got 6 in the afternoon. UN officials estimate that a third or more of the people living in Lebanon will soon be Syrian Damn. UN officials estimate that a third or more of the people living in Lebanon will soon be Syrian refugees. 1.6 million in a country with a pre-war population of just 4.4 million people. Or as Clark said, the equivalent of the entire population of Mexico taking refuge in the U.S. Dang. There's only really 1.6 million Mexicans. That's crazy. Competition for homes, jobs, and government services has created anger that regularly spills over into protests, even as most people welcome their neighbors in need. Host countries are spending billions building schools, hospitals, water and sewage systems, power plants, roads, and housing to cope with the population surge. Refugee camps increasingly look like permanent cities, while local governments, schools, hospitals, mosques, supermarkets, and refugee camps increasingly look like permanent cities, with local governments, schools, hospitals, mosques, supermarkets, and internet cafes. Jeez. A new generation is rising in the camps, with the births of thousands of children. Arabic-speaking Syrians children are learning Turkish. What? Let's read that one more time. A new generation is rising in the camps with the births of thousands of children. Arabic-speaking Syrian children are learning Turkish in schools to prepare for a life in exile. As of January 2, there are 2,354,447 Syrian refugees. Dang. That's a lot of motherfuckers. Jordan's Zaatari refugee camp, with 120,000 people, is suddenly the country's fourth largest city. Wow. A new camp under construction deep in the desert is expected to be even bigger. Rather than tents and trailers, it has steel frame buildings, an acknowledgement that the crisis will last many years. At least there's an acknowledgement. More than 3/4 of the refugees live outside of camps, renting apartments or garage space, finding shelter in abandoned buildings, or constructing homes on vacant land. The population of many towns has doubled or tripled virtually overnight. While many of those fleeing are destitute, large numbers of Syrian professionals and business leaders have left too. They are buying, renting, or even building high-end real estate in Beirut, Amman, and Istanbul. Rising demand has driven up rents across the region, in many cases forcing local people out of their homes. And see, that's the problem. I think that's a big problem. Why does that cause a rise in rent? Rising demand has driven up rents. Rising demand has driven up rents. Rising demand has driven up rents. But what is it? We always just say, well, demand and price goes up, but that's artificial, man. That the price doesn't have to go up if demand goes up. You could just keep it the same. You just are gonna miss out on some gains, but you could just keep it the same. So I don't get that part. Rising demand. You have people coming into your country, refugees that need housing, and that drives demand for a home or a condo that used to be a set price before, now it goes up. That doesn't make sense to me, especially when there are people in need. That means there's sharks at the top who are just eating and won't stop swimming, because they can't stop swimming, obviously. But damn, dude, to the point that some Jordanian families to the point that in many cases forcing local people out of their own homes. So then it's not a matter of national interest, which a lot of extremist nativists make a point that that's what it is, but it's not about that. Then if it's about the rising demand from an influx of immigration has driven up rents across the region. Immigrants can run the price of rent up too. Okay. Migration of refugees constitutes a rising demand that requires a driving up of rents. That doesn't make sense. Let's see. Rising demand has driven up rents across the region, in many cases forcing local people out of their homes. Some Jordanian families are living in UN tents meant for Syrian refugees. Wow, that's crazy. The region's worst winter storm in years has added to the misery in recent days. Refugees who have flimsy shelters, no source of heat, and little warm clothing are now being forced to cope with freezing rain and snow. Cross-border trade has been devastated. Farmers who used to ship goods to Syria or across Syria to Saudi Arabia and other big markets have suffered major losses. Tourism is down in Jordan and Lebanon, where a large number of Syrians are now begging on the fashionable streets of Beirut. A recent World Bank report said that between 2011 and 2014, the Syrian crisis is likely to cut the growth of Lebanon's gross domestic product by 2.9% points annually, costing billions in lost economic activity. Costing billions in lost economic activity. That's worrying to think about. The report said increased competition for jobs is forcing down wages and could double the jobless rate among Lebanese workers to more than 20%. All those factors, the report concluded, are likely to push at least 170,000 more Lebanese into poverty, adding to the 1 million who are already there. The Turkish government has spent more than 2.5 billion to care for the refugees. Syrian patients are now the majority in many hospitals and clinics. Schools are running 2 or 3 shifts a day to keep a generation of Syrians from going uneducated. Across the region, services such as electricity, sewage, and garbage collection are stretched to the breaking point. Water is scarce in Jordan, which has less renewable water than almost any other country. Hundreds of thousands of people are draining overburdened aquifers at an alarming rate. Jordanian officials said it will cost 1.7 billion to continue housing the nearly 600,000 refugees in the country, including the construction of power plants, sewage treatment plants, hospitals, and 120 schools in the coming months. That is equal to nearly 18% of last year's total national budget. Jordanian officials said refugee spending will jump to 3.2 billion next year. Before the Syrian war, Kilis was a quiet outpost of about 80,000 people on the Syrian border. Now its population is about 130,000. It's not that much. At Kilis State Hospital with pretty salmon-colored walls, surgeons have operated on Syrians at least 11,000 times this year in 5 operating rooms that run non-stop. Okay, that's a lot. Bomb and bullet wounds account for most of the injuries. More than 530 refugees have died in the hospital this year, and more than 150,000 Syrian babies have been born. Doctors keep photos of the grotesque wounds they have treated, including one that shows a fetus with a bullet wound to its foot. Oh, damn. The hospital surgeon saved Dania Amrush's life. Her father survived the blast that maimed her, and he immediately started digging in the rubble for his family. Neighbors and rescuers arrived. Mostly, he was finding dead bodies. The details of that night come to him now in disconnected bits. Dania in Aleppo hospital. Her stomach flayed. His daughter's intestines. What? The details of that night come to him now in disconnected bits. Dania at an Aleppo hospital. Her stomach flayed. His daughter's intestines. I see. Doctors telling him to go to Turkey immediately. Kilis State Hospital was an hour away, just over the border. Dania's best chance was there. He rode with her in an ambulance. A phone call to his wife. Dania was in surgery. He was still in his pajamas. I didn't expect her to live, says Amrush, who worked as a tailor in Aleppo. I still can't believe what happened. Sometimes I think it couldn't have happened. 4 or 5 months, he has been sleeping on the floor in the hall or sometimes outside on the grass. His son Mahmoud, 8, sleeps where he can find space. They have no money. The hospital gives them food. Their only possessions are a few clothes stuffed in a small plate bag. Dania's mother, Gada Amrush, has slept every night in the armchair beside her daughter's hospital bed. She doesn't mind. After what happened, nothing is really difficult anymore. Before the war, Lebanon's population was about 60% Muslim, with almost equal numbers of Sunnis and Shiites. The flood of refugees threatens to upset that delicate equilibrium. The vast majority of the million or so Syrian refugees in Lebanon are Sunni. That nearly doubles the number of Sunnis in a country where sectarian tensions are always high. I'm going to read that again. Before the war, Lebanon's population was about 60% Muslim, with almost equal numbers of Sunnis and Shiites. The flood of refugees threatens to upset that delicate equilibrium. The vast majority of the million or so Syrian refugees in Lebanon are Sunnis. That nearly doubles the number of Sunnis in a country where sectarian tensions are always high. Hezbollah, the powerful Shiite militia backed by Iran, is already fighting alongside Assad's military. Many Lebanese see introducing into Lebanon huge new population of Sunnis, most of whom hate Assad, as a potential disaster. In a sign of deepening sectarian fallout from the Syria crisis, suicide bombers killed 25 people in a November 19 attack on the Iranian embassy compound in Beirut. Lebanese officials have chosen not to create formal refugee camps, fearing what happened the last time they did. Damn. When the Palestinians came in 1948, we thought they would stay for a couple of weeks. Oh man, that sucks. Let's see. Lebanon set up camps for Palestinians displaced in 1948 by the creation of Israel. This is where the chat gets interesting. This is where I get banned. Lebanon set up camps for Palestinians displaced in 1948 by the creation of Israel and that year's Arab-Israeli war. To this day, nearly 300,000 Palestinians live in a dozen refugee camps, which have evolved from tent encampments into permanent towns. This scares us to death, said Antoine Chedid, Lebanese ambassador to the United States. When the Palestinians came in 1948, we thought they would stay for a couple weeks. Whoa. Growing resentment about the large numbers of refugees has led to protests and occasional violence across the region. In Lebanon early this month, refugees said local villagers in the Bekaa Valley attacked an informal encampment where at least 400 refugees were living, torching tents and tearing down other makeshift structures. Perhaps wary of war, maybe bewildered by and suspicious of the complex web of factions warring inside Syria, the world has been slower to donate help to Syrian refugees than it has in other recent catastrophes. The United Nations, in the biggest appeal of its history, has asked for nearly $5 billion, about $3 billion for refugees and $2 billion for humanitarian aid inside Syria. About 62% of that has been raised. The US government has provided about $1.4 billion in humanitarian aid. Private groups said fundraising has been difficult. Save the Children has raised $1.6 million in private donations for Syrian refugees over the past 3 years. In the first 2 weeks after the recent Philippines typhoon, the group raised $6 million. After the 2010 Haiti earthquake, it raised more than $26 million in 6 months. Damn, people don't want to pay. People don't want to help. Unlike a sudden natural disaster, which elicits sympathy, this is a complicated and protracted crisis, so it's difficult to compare and sustain public attention, says Michael Clausen, a Save the Children executive. There's no clear sense of who the good guys are. It seems like yet another conflict in the Middle East, and is easy to ignore. Relief officials are worried because the crisis is getting worse. The United Nations says 6.5 million Syrians have been forced out of their homes and have taken shelter inside Syria, often with relatives in rural villages. The United Nations says 6.5 million Syrians have been forced out of their homes and have taken shelter inside Syria, often with relatives in rural villages. Nearly 3 million more are in need of food, medicine, and other assistance. That's about 9.3 million people, closing in on half of Syria's 22 million pre-war population, who are already vulnerable or homeless. Andrew Harper, who heads the UN Refugee Agency's office in Jordan, said 400,000 internally displaced Syrians are living within 36 miles of the Jordanian border, which could mean a new tsunami of refugees at any time. I pray that I will be proved wrong and that the conflict in Syria will be resolved, and those who are now displaced will be able to return home, Harper said. But do you honestly see that happening anytime soon? Sheesh. 5 months after the bomb, Mohammed Amrouche still had has a slightly dazed look in his eyes. He paces the hospital hallways to pass the time. Ever the tailor, he wears smart black pants and a stylish black and blue striped dress shirt. The only time he smiles, faintly and briefly, is at a compliment about his clothes. He said he left Syria only after 3 of Assad's bombs had decimated his life there. About 18 months ago, a bomb devastated his family's home, so he moved in with his parents. Last year, his tailor shop was destroyed. Then in May came the attack that maimed Dania, his daughter. He thought about leaving Aleppo after the earlier attacks, but my parents were old and they refused to get out, he says. I couldn't leave them and I stayed with them till the end. As he speaks, Dania steps out of bed and tries to walk, but it is obvious she can barely put weight on her crushed right leg. She will probably need at least one more surgery and months of physical therapy. Asked what she misses most about home, she answers in her tiny voice, my toys. She smiles at the memory. She describes them as her children. There were lots of them. They were in my living room and I lined them up on my shelf. She explains they never slept or ate anything, but they were always hungry. Kids, man. Her father rubs his eyes and listens to his little girl talk about her lost home. He walks out into the hallway. In one miserable night, we found ourselves here, he says. Maybe one day we will find ourselves back in our city. He doesn't seem convinced. He looks out the window into the empty, brown fields beyond the hospital walls. It is not his land, but it is now where he lives. That's one story. That was a story of a family that was bombed in Syria, Aleppo, in their house by what seems to be Shiites or Lebanese or whatever army's operating, doing whatever they want. Likes are always appreciated. Thank you guys. But in this one, the little girl got maimed. She was blown up in her stomach. Her nose was a little beat up. Her chin was messed up too. What I'm trying to relate it to is where from this book Exit West, where Said loses his mother in a shell strike because she gets struck by a artillery shell. And in this case, in this family, they got blown up by an artillery shell, by a bomb that landed, and it took out their cousins, a cousin, an uncle, a grandmother. So I'm trying to link it to this. And then obviously at the end of that paragraph, it's going to be a link to, trying to link it to how it resonates or how it impacted me or how it challenged me. But for context, I've seen worse. So let's see. In Exit West, Said's mother plays a significant role in his life, especially after his father's death. She's a former teacher. Oh, I'm sorry. Her death by a stray bullet. That's what it was. It was a stray bullet. Stray bullet. Her death by a stray bullet during a violent event marks a pivotal moment. So I gotta change my. Struck by a round. Struck by a round. In the middle of fire. Okay. I'm gonna read this again from the beginning. A ball bounces and rolls across the courtyard of a South Central LA home as two children play soccer, unaware of the looming storm ahead. Minutes earlier, a familiar older gentleman had stepped through a tall 15-foot by 30-foot gate with a small 3-foot by 7-foot door at its center. The same door through which he now was exiting. through which he was now exiting. That's what it was. In a flash, after locking eyes with the old soul, who seemed to hold the door open for an eternity within our gaze, more than a handful of agents stormed in, military-grade rifles in hand, all pointed at me in the initial rush. Once they moved farther into the property, one remained, his rifle fixed at the base of my skull where the occipital bone meets C1. Their true target, a drug-dealing, undocumented grandpa who had just completed a sale to a regular. After reading Mohsin Hamid's Exit West, I came to see this event as my first encounter with a mysterious door. The door through which a new world came to me was an old one, a door I knew well and expected little more of. It was a door that brought me happiness when I was tired and needed my bed, but also frustration when I didn't want to return home from the park. Yet somehow, in a very non-fictional world, I came face to face with the incarnation of Hamid's door concept. Let's see. This experience opened my eyes to the harsh realities behind the idea of migration that Hamid explores through magical realism. The fear, uncertainty, or hope that accompany every passage into the unknown. While Hamid's Exit West uses fantastical doors to symbolize the emotional and psychological dimensions of migration, many real-world immigrant testimonies reveal similar experiences of displacement, loss, and resilience through literal borders and journeys. This essay will compare Hamid's fictional portrayal of migration with first-hand immigrant narratives to examine how both capture the human cost of leaving one world in search of another. One struggle experienced by populations who migrate from war-torn countries is the psychological trauma of losing a loved one in graphic fashion, from the ensuing violence. An example in the book is when Saeed's mother is struck by a round trying to retrieve an item from the family car in the middle of a firefight. This event was, can I say, cataclysmic? Does that work? Was cataclysmic. Is that a word? I'm gonna be like Rampage Jackson. Yo chat, tell me. Yo chat, is cataclysmic a word? This event was cataclysmic. I'm gonna figure it out. I'm gonna use it. Sounds smart. Relating to or denoting a violent nature event. Then I don't like it. Catalyst. Maybe that's the word I want. Catalyst. I should probably charge my phone. Uno momento, por favor. I should probably charge my phone. Uno momento, por favor. Hope that works. Okay. Who the fuck? Did I drop my mouse? I dropped my mouse. Drop my mouse somewhere. Anyways. Let's see. It was a catalyst that lunged Said into the unknown. Allowing him the fortitude to step through a mysterious door. I think that works. Is the game still going on? Who was it that told me? Javier. An example. One struggle experienced by populations who migrate from war-torn countries is a psychological trauma of losing a loved one in graphic fashion from the ensuing violence. In graphic fashion from the ensuing violence. An example in the book is when Said's mother is struck by a round trying to retrieve an item from the family car in the middle of a fire. Dumbass. This event was a catalyst that launched Said into the unknown. Launched Said into the unknown. I don't like the way that sounds. Allowing him the fortitude to step through a mysterious door. But also the weight of the pain. The burden of. See, I need help. English majors, please. Please, English majors, please. Monstro. Oh. But also open the door to burden. I don't know. I think I'm just going to keep it like that. One struggle experienced by populations who migrate from war-torn countries is the psychological trauma of losing a loved one in graphic fashion from the ensuing violence. An example in this book is when Said's mother is struck by a round trying to retrieve an item from a family car or in the middle of a firefight. This event was a catalyst that launched Said into the unknown, allowing him the fortitude to step through a mysterious door. Let's read another article. I think I need to read another article from the Washington Post. Misashikwa. Let's see, Washington Post. What the freak? Refuge. Scraps of life. Sniper victim. Wedding day. War widow. War widow? Is that kind of like losing a mother? New orphans? No, because medical misery. It's either sniper victim or war widow. So let's see. How do I do this? Sniper victim or war widow. Sniper victim or war widow. Which one should I read? Number 3. I'm doing homework. I'm doing a comparative essay. So, if you have any suggestions, or if you want to tune in, let me know so I can give you a prompt. It would help me a lot. Meanwhile, I gotta do a discuss. What the fuck? I have to do a discussion post for business. Let's read it. The concept of pricing is one of the most important and difficult concepts for any business. This becomes even more important for small businesses, when the margin for error is typically smaller. The following video describes the economic concepts of opportunity. The following video describes the economic concepts of opportunity. What? The following video describes the economic concepts of opportunity costs and implicit costs. That doesn't even make sense to me, but I need to reread it more time. It also dives deep into the different types of pricing and costing, which is not always very obvious to entrepreneurs. There you go. And small business owners. These concepts are explained in a very fun way, and it introduces you to the crash course videos, which are all very informative. Hope you enjoy. Then, once you watch the video, discuss the following questions. Think of these questions. Name at least 4 things that the video describes and that you learned from it. Write a small paragraph about each concept. How do you think it might be helpful in your current, future small business? Make sure to number your answers so that your fellow classmates can easily follow your text. Step 2, once you post your thoughts, read your classmates. You need to reply to at least 2 with 50 words minimum. Let's watch this short YouTube video while we're on YouTube Live.
Grammarly now uses AI to help you write, not just revise. Type a prompt and generate a persuasive, mistake-free draft in seconds. Personalized.
Shut the fuck up.
Welcome to Crash Course Economics. I'm Adrienne Hill.
And I'm Jacob Clifford, and I have a confession. Economists' perfect little models don't exactly reflect real life, which is disappointing.
Don't worry, you're not wasting your time. Microeconomics explains ideas and concepts in pretty broad terms and leaves the business specifics to other courses like accounting, management, and marketing. Understanding economics can help entrepreneurs become better decision makers. Think of it a little like a liberal arts education. It's not where you go to learn any specific job, but it can help you see the big picture.
Let's say a lawyer stops practicing law and decides to open up a pizza parlor. Let's say his total revenue from selling pizza is $50,000, and he has to pay $20,000 to cover stuff like the ingredients, the oven, rent, and wages. Now, an accountant would calculate his profit, the revenue minus the cost, as $30,000. Not bad. But an economist recognizes that there's a cost missing, the opportunity cost. Our pizza entrepreneur loses income he would have earned by being a lawyer, let's say $100,000. Now, if you factor that in, he's actually losing $70,000. But he's his own boss. He might be happier running a pizza shop even though he's making less money. Well, maybe, but the point is you have to factor in these implicit benefits and costs when you make decisions. So there's actually 2 types of profit. Accounting profit, which is revenue minus just explicit costs, those traditional out-of-pocket costs you think of when you run a business. There's economic profit, which is revenue minus explicit and implicit costs, which is those indirect opportunity costs.
In this example, putting a dollar price on opportunity cost is pretty easy. It's just the income he's not earning as a lawyer. Maybe the idea of putting a price on intangible, implicit things seems a little strange,
But he's not a
you do
lawyer.
it all the time.
He's trying to run a pizza
When you're
shop or
deciding
a
whether
bar.
or not to get a job, you calculate the explicit cost, like how much it costs to get to work every day, but also the implicit cost,
is a
the
little
value
ridiculous.
of the
Let's do it again. What the fuck was that?
To pay $20,000 to cover stuff like the ingredients, the oven, rent, and wages. Now, an accountant would calculate his profit, the revenue minus the cost, as $30,000. Not bad. But an economist recognizes that there's a cost missing, the opportunity
Opportunity
cost.
cost.
Our pizza entrepreneur loses income he would have earned by being a lawyer, let's say $100,000. Now, if you factor that in, he's actually losing $70,000. But he's
What is he losing though? He didn't want to be a lawyer. I don't understand where this lawyer concept comes out of. Where did they rip lawyer out of?
stops practicing law and
Right.
decides to open up a pizza parlor. Let's say his total revenue from
Oh,
selling pizza is
okay.
$50,000.
Fuck. I'm a dumbass. Because he was already a lawyer. Okay.
better decision makers. Think of it a little like a liberal arts education. It's not where
That
you
makes
go to learn
sense.
any specific
But you didn't want to be a lawyer
but
no
it can
more.
help you see the big picture.
Let's follow this real quick. Let's follow it.
Let's say a lawyer stops practicing law and decides to open up a pizza parlor. Let's say his
Okay, I would say that if a lawyer stops practicing law and opens up a pizza parlor, then what fucking loss? There's no loss because he doesn't want to be a lawyer. Now he wants to be a pizza parlor owner.
total
His total
revenue
revenue
from selling
of
pizza is $50,000, and he has to pay $20,000 to cover stuff like the ingredients, the
$30,000.
ovens, rent, and wages.
That's
Now,
what his
an
pizza
accountant
job
would
makes.
calculate his profit, the revenue minus the cost, as $30,000.
That's
Not
objective.
bad. But an economist recognizes that there's a cost missing, the opportunity
What
cost. Our
opportunity?
pizza entrepreneur loses income he would have earned by being a lawyer.
But
Let's say
that's not an
$100,000.
opportunity cost of being a pizza parlor owner, is it? I don't think so. So, if I'm a mechanic and I want to be a bartender, and my mechanic job at BMW would make me $200,000 a year per se. Let's just say this is some bullshit, right? But and so I move on from that job because now I want to be a bar owner who doesn't sell food, just beer. So we know where that's going. If I still make a profit, how can I calculate an opportunity cost if I don't want to be a lawyer? This is funny.
Practicing law and decides to open up a pizza parlor. Let's say his total revenue from
He
selling
won't make
pizza
lawyer
is
money.
$50,000, and he has to pay $20,000 to cover stuff like the ingredients, the oven, rent, and wages.
Valid.
Now, an accountant would calculate his profit, the revenue minus the cost, as $30,000.
Objective.
Not bad. But an economist recognizes that there's a cost missing, the opportunity cost. Our
Economist is a
pizza
fucking
entrepreneur
moron.
loses income he would have earned by being a lawyer, let's say $100,000. Now, if you factor that in, he's actually losing $70,000. But he's his own boss. He might be happier running a pizza shop even though he's making less money. Well, maybe, but the point is you have to factor in these implicit benefits and costs when you make decisions. So there's
what
actually
reason?
two types of profit. Accounting profit, which is revenue minus just explicit costs, those traditional out-of-pocket costs you think of when you run a business. And there's economic profit, which is revenue minus explicit and implicit costs, which is those indirect opportunity costs.
In this example, putting a dollar price on opportunity cost is pretty
sounds
easy.
like
It's just the
loopholes.
income he's not earning as a lawyer. Maybe the idea of putting a price on intangible, implicit things seems a little strange, but you do it all the time. When you're deciding whether or not to get a job, you calculate the explicit costs, like how much it costs to get to work every day, but also the implicit costs, the value of the things you have to give up. Maybe you're giving up the money you could earn doing some other job, time with family and friends, or the opportunity to binge watch Gilmore Girls. How much that actually costs depends on the individual. But if the wage offered is greater than the cost of all those things, you take the job. Businesses use the same logic. They calculate and the cost of a cost depends on the individual. But if the wage offered is greater than the cost of all those things, you take the job. Businesses
doesn't cost
use the
anything to
same
sit on your
logic.
ass and
They
watch TV.
calculate their potential revenue and their costs of production,
your
including
lifetime.
implicit costs, to make informed decisions. This means that companies in competitive markets don't make very much profit. In fact, economists
I still
are
don't understand how if you choose to not be a lawyer anymore, you choose to cut that off. That's not a revenue source anymore. And you just want to be a pizza shop owner, that your losses as a lawyer would count as operating costs or losses, because You don't want to be a lawyer.
You that they make
Cash
no
money,
economic
baby.
profit. To be clear, companies need to make accounting profit to
Cash
stay in
money.
business. So they do make a profit, just not
not
above and beyond their opportunity costs. Here's why. If you're the first one to
Opportunity
start selling
cost, that's what
glow
it is.
sticks
Explain
at a
to me
rave,
opportunity
you might
cost.
make some economic profit. You would cover the cost of glow sticks and possibly all of your opportunity costs, the money you could be earning doing something else. But if you're making a ton of extra money on top of that, it's likely that glow stick competitors will jump in the market. Competition will lower the price and reduce your sales. New vendors will continue to enter until all that extra profit disappears, just like the beautiful light of a glow stick fading away on Sunday morning. Businesses
That's
that
the
stay in the
market.
market make just as much as they would doing something else. In other words, they have zero economic profit.
So
That's
they
what
leave?
economists call normal profit. And it's the minimum level of economic profit a company needs to stay in business.
Just so many
But remember,
degrees.
this is only in very competitive markets that
one
have
stupid
low
word.
barriers for entry. If it's hard for other companies to enter a market, then a business can earn economic profit.
So now let's look at the cost of production, the actual cost of producing things. Economists point out that there's two types of costs. There's variable costs and fixed costs. Variable costs change with the amount produced. So a variable cost for a pizza restaurant is the cost of the ingredients, like wheat and cheese,
Okay.
and the wages paid to workers. The more pizza that you make, the more resources you need, and the higher those costs. But fixed costs, as you might imagine, are fixed. The cost of an oven or rent don't
I'm waiting for them to throw in here a fixed cost of you losing your lawyer license, which would be fucking ridiculous.
change even if you produce more pizza. Now together, fixed costs and variable costs make up the total cost for a specific number of pizzas. Now average cost, or the cost per unit, is the total cost divided by the number of output. The average cost of producing most things initially falls as more is produced. So if the owner of a pizza shop spends $10,000 on a brand new oven, the average cost of that very first pizza produced is going to be about $10,000. The average cost of producing 2 pizzas would be about $5,000. Once you get to 10 pizzas, it's like $1,000. That's an expensive pizza. The more units he makes, the lower the average cost per pizza, because fixed costs can be spread over a large number of units. Now, obviously, the owner wouldn't have bought that oven if he expected only to make 10 pizzas. Buying expensive equipment only makes sense if you plan on making a lot. And that's one reason why large companies often have a cost advantage over small companies.
So the cost to produce only one car would be really, really high, like millions of dollars. But the average price of a new car in the US is just over $33,000. To keep their average cost down, car manufacturers make hundreds of cars per day in huge, expensive factories. Their total costs are astronomical, but the average cost per car is relatively low, unless you want an Aston Martin or something. This is called economies of scale. Companies that produce more can utilize mass production techniques and spread out their fixed costs over a lot of units. Economies of scale work so well, some companies get big enough to dominate their industry and limit competition. We'll get to that. For now, let's go back to the
Monopoly?
pizza example. Economies of scale mean that a larger pizza restaurant may have a slight cost advantage compared to a smaller restaurant because they can afford things like ovens with conveyor belts. To get the average cost to fall even further, a restaurant could automate.
You think in that portion it's more like the labor, who wants to take the most labor? Because a big company still charges a big amount of labor, but they don't give away that much labor to the person who actually does the work. And a small company takes the same amount of labor, I would say, maybe just a little less, but the bigger portion to the one person, because it's less bosses or smaller scale. So I wonder if in that portion it's just more about how much one person wants to take per share in labor. Because say for me, in California, what's the rule? $500 or less in contract jobs. So between parts and labor, it can't be more than $500 for someone to work a handyman job with no licenses, right? But then, so if parts are $300 and that person charges, and this is what the market, I think, would say here in California. You do one repair, parts are a third of your final price, minimum. That's, I would say, covering up charges and taxes. So if I charge $100, if $100 is parts or materials, then I gotta charge at least $400. Yeah, I would say $400. Or $300 to $400. Now, I could do that job, one part, for $100. I could do it for $200, and then fit in 2 full, same one of those jobs, maybe even a third one on a discount, and $100 discount, $101 discount, to stay under 500, and offer more labor work to that person. Me undercutting myself. This is talking like this stupid concept of not operating cost, opportunity cost, right? So an opportunity cost for me there would be a loss of $200 per, and do the job at $200 instead of $400. Then I could do about 3 with a discount under 400, under 500, and that person would get more labor out of me, more work, more bang for their buck. But it's me cutting down labor, right? I don't know if that makes sense. If I'm fucking just talking shit, tell me.
Automate the entire process and have robots produce 1,000 pizzas per hour. But that doesn't make sense if no one wants to buy all those pizzas. Although it's great to keep costs down, the goal of a business is not to have the lowest average cost. The goal is to make the right number of pizzas that maximize profit. To produce the right amount, a business should follow the profit maximizing
Little
rule.
Caesars, I'm
Continue
ready.
to produce as long as the marginal revenue of the last unit produced is greater or equal to the marginal cost. This is often shortened down to produce where MR equals MC. Let's break it down. Marginal revenue is the additional revenue earned from selling another unit. So if a pizza company can sell every pizza for $10, then their marginal revenue for each is $10. Marginal cost is the additional cost of producing another unit. It is the change in total cost from producing one more pizza. So if the marginal cost of another pizza is $5 and you can sell it for $10, then you should definitely produce that pizza. You would make a $5 profit off it. If the marginal cost of the next pizza is $9, then you should produce that pizza too. But if the marginal cost of the next pizza is $12, you shouldn't make it. The additional cost is greater than the additional revenue. Notice in this example, the marginal cost is increasing. That's true for the production of almost everything. The more you make, each additional unit is eventually going to cost more.
LA, do you know how much your car's worth?
Commercial.
More than I owe, hopefully. Evans.
Performing on the biggest stage in the world was just one step in my journey. Hi, I'm Ronnie. When I teach
Let's learn why in the thought bubble.
Businesses have all kinds of variable costs, but let's imagine a pizza shop where the only variable cost is labor. And while we're using the power of imagination, let's say that they're making rainbow flavored pizza. Anyway, when one worker is hired, that worker does absolutely everything himself. He purees the rainbows, assembles the pizza, puts it in the oven, and delivers it. But when a company hires a second worker, they start to specialize. One worker prepares the ingredients, while the other makes the pizza and puts it in the oven. Now, this specialization decreases the marginal cost of each pizza. If one worker can make 5 pizzas per hour, but 2 workers can produce 20 pizzas, then the additional cost of
Margins.
each of those pizzas will be lower. But the benefits of specialization are limited. As the company continues to hire more and more workers, the total amount of pizzas they produce each hour is going to increase at a slower rate. They've run up against the law of diminishing marginal returns. As you add variable resources like workers to a set number of fixed resources like ovens, the additional output generated from each additional worker will eventually decrease. There are just too many cooks in the kitchen. Now, eventually,
sense.
they'll get to a point where hiring another worker only adds one more pizza to their hourly total. Now, the marginal cost of that last pizza is huge, and it's likely to be higher than the additional revenue the company is going to get from selling that pizza. So to maximize profit, a company should make sure they produce the right number of pizzas, where the marginal cost of the last unit produced is going to be up to, but not greater than, the marginal revenue.
Thanks, Thought Bubble. The law of diminishing marginal returns applies to all sorts of tasks. For farmers, there's likely to be a large additional yield from fertilizing a field for the first time. But each time they fertilize, the additional gains diminish. At some point, too much fertilizer can actually cause the total yield to fall. This also applies to studying. The returns from your first hour of studying are high. Instead of failing your final exam, you may get a C. Another hour of studying may get you a B, and another hour may get you up to a B+. But every hour you get lower and lower returns. And again, at some point, maybe the 12th hour of studying, your grade would actually go down since you stayed up all night and fell asleep during the test. Understanding this law helps
that makes
people
sense.
balance costs and benefits. But there's one more cost we need to cover: sunk costs. A sunk cost is a cost that's already been paid and can't be recovered. Economists stress that sunk costs shouldn't be included when making future decisions. Assume a business spends $2 million developing a new product, and then no one wants that product. They have to come up with something else.
Trump
The
monopoly.
money spent on developing the first product is a sunk cost
I'm not a
and
hater,
should be
but it doesn't
ignored
have-
moving forward. This type of rational decision making seems like common sense, but behavioral economists point out that people make irrational decisions all the time. Think about dating. Imagine you've been with someone for a couple years. If your relationship starts going sour, you might try to ignore the red flags. Who wants to give up on a relationship that you've invested so much time in? Economics tells us to think about sunk costs and focus instead on the benefits and costs in the future. Get out of there.
So there you have it. Everything you need to know to run your own business, except not really. Economics explains business decision making in broad terms.
If you really want to learn all the details, become an entrepreneur and start a business. And if you ever get interviewed by Fortune Magazine or the Wall Street Journal, make sure to tell them that it all started here with Crash Course Economics. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next week.
Crash Course Economics was made with the help of all these nice people. You can help with our costs by subscribing to Crash Course at
remember shit
Patreon,
about what I
where your
watched.
support will help keep Crash Course free for everyone forever, and you get great rewards.
Don't
Thanks for
remember
watching,
shit.
and DFTBA.
Let's break it down. Marginal revenue is the additional revenue earned from... Oh, Jesus. Are you
Bloopers.
okay?
I'm gonna figure out how to screen share so you guys can watch videos while I'm watching them. I'm doing a business class. I'm doing an English
Make your
class.
browser fast.
Shut up, commercials.
Make your browser
I'm doing an English class, which is freshman English, but I fucking hate it. I've never liked English, so I never went past it. I'm also doing a business class for entrepreneurship. So if that's your flow, then check in once in a while. I might be reading a book or watching some content about it. It's free college, man. Why not? Pay a lot for it, might as well make it cheaper for someone. And honestly, bro, it doesn't take, you don't really have to go to college, but if one of us takes a hit and a few of you are listening, then maybe a couple of you will grab the message and build something from it. You could learn off of YouTube, man. I learned from the streets. I learned from my grandpa, and then I just try to clean it up and do it better. Not bigger, just cleaner, legal. Don't get in trouble. You know? It's not worth getting in trouble. Unless it is a big money tag. But those opportunities come rare, far few in between. America is land of rags to riches for a reason. It doesn't mean that everyone's gonna go from rags to riches. I think that's the misconception. People think that everyone is gonna go from rags to riches. No, it means that you come here in rags and there's a possibility of getting from rags to riches, but it's not guaranteed. And that's why it's a dream, because it's a dream. Not everyone's gonna have the same dream. It's not gonna look the same for everyone. And some people don't realize their dreams, so it's unattainable for some.
safe. Make your
That was a good one,
Welcome to Crash Course.
though. Stop that. Let's see. So, name at least 4 things that the video describes that you learned from it. I don't know. Let's do tonight. Write a small paragraph about each concept. Do you think it might be helpful? Alright guys, I gotta focus. I'll be back on maybe. I honestly don't think I'll be on later, but maybe tomorrow at some point. I'll read a book on business. Probably read 2 or 3 paragraphs. This is my forehead under my hat. I got a little bit of a tan from being in the sun all day with the hat on. Yeah, I'll probably come back tomorrow, read some business stuff, and do a little more of this English. So again, immigrant stories, people who fled war-torn countries, people who left under refugee status. I need to know more about that. So I only have a few hours to get it done. Tomorrow it's due midnight. Tonight discussion for business, but I'll get it done myself. Okay. Thank you guys for the 4 likes. Appreciate it. Catch you guys later.